Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of this conversation between myself, Naima B. Robert, and my brother, Nasir al Amin. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Give salam to the people.
Wa alaikum salam, wa alaikum salam.
He is our local agent provocateur, and he is here to provide, inshallah, a thought-provoking slash male perspective. Don't let him tell you that it's the right one. He likes to say that, but he's going to bring another perspective to some of the conversations around relationships and marriage, specifically in the Muslim community. Welcome, Brother Nasir.
Thank you for having me.
Right. One of the questions that has come up again and again, and one of the issues that we see so much in our community, it seems to be the elders and the youngsters, is the issue of expectations, right? And a lot of the time, unmet expectations. And something that I've found to be true in life is that in the gap between expectation and reality is where frustration lies, right? So the wider the gap between our reality and our expectation, the more frustration, the more resentment, the more disappointment we tend to feel. And I think that this is really an important area for us to catch, both as married people and also as people who are looking to get married, right? Because we have so many expectations about marriage, about relationships, and about that side of life. And I really would like us to be able to, inshallah, today, hopefully give some really useful and practical advice to the viewers about managing expectations. What's your take on the whole expectations conversation?
So I like, well, first, coming from the right perspective, I like the fact that you use the word catch, right? Because I think that's one of the essential things to do is when it comes to expectations, making sure that those expectations are held loosely, that those expectations are really preferences, right? This is what I prefer to happen in my marriage. This is how I prefer my spouse to show up, right? And this is how I would prefer to show up, right? Versus this is how it must be. And I think that's where we get into trouble, is when we escalate our preferences to the level of a command. Right? A God-like command that this must happen. And if it doesn't, there's going to be hell to be paid, right? Because that's essentially what we informally say, right? Or we show through our actions. And from the perspective of a modality, that's the problematic space we get in, right? When we create these demands and commands on our spouse, on our relationship, or on ourselves, right? And so that's what you have to catch. If you catch that, and again, from the modality, when you catch that from your thinking, you're able to shift that in terms of the emotions when you don't get your expectations met, right? And thus you catch the thinking, catch the emotion, you'll typically respond in a better way, right? You won't respond in a extreme manner because your thinking is an extreme, right? Demands and commands are extremes. So as long as you can de-escalate demand to the level of a preference, this is what I prefer. You can be in that space of annoyance and irritation when you don't get what you want when you want it, because it's a preference, right? I wish that this would happen. This is my desire versus this has to happen.
I think what comes up for me when I hear you speaking, obviously for people in a marriage, in a relationship, this is golden advice. And if you haven't seen the first episode, then guys, please do go back and watch the first episode, because we talked about this at length, actually, in the space of emotional needs and managing emotions. But I think that you mentioned about, I wish this would happen. And I desire this and I want this. And I think I want to speak to, you guys know already, I can't let this go, right? I believe that we have really been programmed by our upbringing and the media that we consume as we've grown up through Disney, Hollywood, films, and music, especially music, right? I I know the kind of songs that the girls my daughter's age listen to, right? I hear them sometimes, Harry Styles and all this kind of thing. And he'd listen to the words, and I always kind of pull up the words and say, listen to what he's saying. Do you think that's realistic? Is that what you expect your husband to say or to feel about you? Because what's actually happening is this imaginary and unrealistic version of love is being programmed, especially into girls. I think boys get it too, but I don't think they get it as much as girls, because girls are the ones who consume the content so much more. And it forms their fantasies, right? It forms their dreams. It forms, their picture of their ideal relationship, of their ideal husband, of how their husband should show up and how he should be. And if he really loves me, he'll be like X, Y, and Z. And I think that it's really important for us as people in general, but I think as Muslims especially, to just take stock of how much of what we expect of a relationship. Yeah, I'm not going to say a marriage, because modern society doesn't teach you anything about marriage. This is my stance, and they teach you about relationships, but not marriage. That's something else. But how much of what we expect from a marriage or relationship is informed by what we have consumed from popular culture, right? I don't know whether you remember in the days of R&B, when R&B was like the thing, and you had the guys saying, I cry for you, or die for you, and all of that, all of those romantic ideals, which is what they are, being shown as this is what real love is. And if it's not this, it ain't it, sis. What are your thoughts on that?
So I would push back a little, and we could probably have a healthy debate over who gets it worse.
Okay.
Because I would say men get it worse, and or are on par with women when it comes to the fantasy, the Disney fantasy of love and relationships that's presented to men, right? Because men, when they love hard, and they have a naive view of what it is a woman wants, right? And what will keep, right? Hence
naive or programmed. Naive or programmed, like they've been told this is how you get the girl, right? Be the nice guy, do all the things, fulfill her fantasies, show her things she's never seen before, all of that.
Yeah. Or that your presence alone can change her from her past experiences. Right? That if you are the man, and quote unquote, as our society and unfortunately our community has done so well, especially the imams from the minbar, this labeling men that don't meet expectations as boys. And that's an important thing. I think we had this conversation before when I said to you, when is the last time you've heard people call women girls? You haven't. We're quick to call men boys when they don't live up to certain expectations, right? And if that's not shaming, I don't know what is, right? But again, it's okay, and it's a part of our society, right? What we're talking about right now with the music and media industry is comfortable with shaming men by saying they're boys if they're not living up to societal, or not even societal, but a particular woman's expectation. Because it's easy for a woman to not get what she wants and then to come on social media or to talk to others and say, oh, he was just a boy. He didn't live up to ABC, right? And we have been so conditioned into accepting that you rarely hear pushback when it comes to men hearing other men called boys by women. You rarely hear pushback on that. It's, yeah, you're right, and men need to do this and this, versus acknowledging the reality. Men, like women, have problematic choices that they make. And that's the issue, the thinking that produces the choices, right? Not so much whether he's a boy or that's shaming, right? That's labeling. And from a mental health point, that's not healthy, right? But again, now coming back to the point, I think we've been conditioned to have this idealistic view of women. That again, if we just act and show up a certain way, we can heal them from whatever trauma they've gone through, protect them from the repercussions of poor choices, a lack of personal responsibility. It's us. It's on us to bear that burden. Right?
To be the Prince Charming.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. You know, show up like the Disney fantasy. So not to downplay how women get it, because they definitely get it, but I think we're, if not on par, we're a bar above, because what's put on our shoulders is we're supposed to be a savior.
Right.
Regardless of whatever choices a sister did throughout her 20s, or from 35 and below, when she's ready to say, as so many say on their profiles on these matrimonial apps, I'm ready for a new chapter of life. Right. Side note, sis, if you out Muslim, you out and you spent your 20s partying and, you know, living it up out in them streets, and then you get on the matrimonial app and you say, now it's time for a new chapter of life, don't say that.
Note to self, okay? Just to take note, ladies. Why should you not say that? Why?
Don't say that, because a brother that is unplugged from that Disney fantasy of having to be the prince in shining armor and to accept you as you are, your savior, your therapist, a brother that's unplugged for that and has his own purpose and agenda and program, he doesn't have time to do that. And nor should he. That's something that you should be taking on yourself, to do that healing, to do that work, to unpack your baggage before you get on the program. That's why. Accountability. See that, and that's the problem, where we get into this thing where we fall into labels and say, you know, you're just acting like a boy, you're not being a man. That doesn't give somebody something to work with. Giving them something to work with is, your communication style is not where it needs to be for a healthy marriage. You need to work on A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Versus the label of you're just a boy. It's just like the example I've given before. Husband comes home and doesn't respond to his wife with a kiss on the cheek or anything like that, and just goes sit down on the couch and starts watching TV. She's sitting in the kitchen and can see him. He just ignored her when he came in, and she just says, "You're a jerk," and goes in the other room. Calling him a jerk does not give him something that he needs to work on. You're going to be in the other room upset, saying that he's a jerk and he doesn't talk to me. He doesn't know how hard my day was. He should greet me. And he's sitting in the other room upset and furious because you disrespected him, calling him a jerk. So he's not given what he needs to work on. Versus you saying, when he ignores you, you know what? You probably had a hard day, but I'm going to go in the other room because I don't like when you come home and don't communicate with me like that. So when you're ready to communicate, come in the room. I would love to talk to you. Now he knows, while he's sitting there watching TV, trying to numb the discomfort of being at work all day with a boss that he probably hates, doing a job that he regrets. He's also thinking, I do need to improve my communication. So he has something to work with. That's why labels are never good. Hence, it's never good to call somebody a boy. No, point out what exactly is the issue. And one last point. The other thing about when we label and we say someone is a boy, we're generalizing to the totality of the person. We're not pointing out the things that they do well, right? We're not accentuating the points that they excel at and that they should keep doing, right? To motivate them to keep doing these things, but let's work on these things. But when you say a boy, you're saying that all of him is problematic, right? And that's just not reality. There are some things that he does well.
Yeah, I think the conversation about sort of, you know, men and boys and sort of manning up and, you know, brothers not stepping up, etc. I think there's definitely something to be said for, and I think we've mentioned in a conversation before, this concept of good masculinity and bad masculinity, in quotes. The good stuff is the things that most women want men to do, right? Provide, physically protect when necessary, you know, be that rock, be that support, you know, emotionally kind of take care of you, you know, be strong, right? So that's the good masculine. But then there's the bad masculine, quote unquote, which is some of the things that you mentioned, actually. A man being on his purpose, right? A man being focused on his purpose, a man having his own path and wanting his people to get on his program, even leading the family in a way that his wife doesn't necessarily agree with, right? That can cause problems, right? That's when we have, people who have an expectation that if I tell him how I want it done or how I feel about it, he's going to change it. He's going to change his mind to make me happy. He's going to change his mind because he can see that I'm not happy with X, Y, and Z. And I think that that is an expectation that a lot of women have, a lot of sisters have. And guys, if you disagree, please do put it in the comments. But there is an expectation, I think. And again, this is such a broad topic because it really depends on people's cultural backgrounds, how they grew up, all sorts of variables, right? But going back to the Disney fantasy, going back to the programming says, his job is to make me happy. His job is to make sure that I am happy. Now, again, guys, don't come for me in the comments. Do not come for me in the comments, because I know that potentially in your culture, it's not like that. And it's maybe never been like that. Okay. So you might be looking at me saying, what is she on about? Right. But if we're talking about Gen X, millennials, certainly Gen Zs coming up, anybody who has grown up in the West or with Western culture, trust and believe we have imbibed these ideas, right? In a relationship, I am the prize. I am the one who needs to be taken care of emotionally, physically, financially, and everything. And if my husband does not make me happy and does not go out of his way to make me happy, this is not a good relationship.
Right. Expectation and the demand, right? The demand that he must fit the box of expectations that I set and society set. And if not, I'm going to shame him, right? And that's what we got to get out of. That's what we got to get out of. If we really want to be serious about fixing marriages, right? If we want to be serious about that, and if we're also serious about mental health, right, in men, right, then we got to start with the language that's shaming. That's critical. But again, that's if we're really serious.
Nobody's serious, bro. Like, come on now. Who cares about that? Stop it. No. Stop. Yeah, this is nonsense. Okay. Look, that whole mental health in men.
Pause, though. Can we pause and what isn't nonsense, mashallah, is that bow tie. That mashallah. Okay.
Mental health, anyone? Mental health check, anyone?
I just want to, self-check, mashallah.
Mental health check, guys.
Because one of the things they say about men is that men don't have a sense of style.
Who says that?
That is the trope that's out there, that a woman has to dress her husband. He has no sense of style. He doesn't know how to match anything. You haven't heard that? You haven't seen that trope?
No. There is definitely something to be said about, the woman kind of coming in and making him into a better version of himself. And
So I think it's good that I just pause to say mashallah and just, that's it. Now
please say mashallah in the comments, guys, so we can move on, to the next topic. Because look, this is
mashallah. Okay, I'm sorry, mashallah.
Mental health in men is just a talking point. It's just a talking point. We know the burden of performance that men go through. Now, it's not to say women don't have a burden of performance. We do, right? Especially, I want to keep this as Muslim centric as possible, because I think that sometimes when we try to open the conversation out, we can miss the nuances that our community provides. Right? What's happening out in the wider society? Yes, some of it seeps into us. Maybe a lot of it seeps in, but we have our own issues, right? So if I'm going to look at the majority of sort of Muslim women who are married and are mothers, there is a burden of performance, and the burden of performance will rise or fall depending on the cultural background, the family situation, whether you're living with in-laws or not, just these types of things, right? However, we have a burden of performance, but what we have is we have a valve, right, that allows us to decompress. A lot of us, not everyone, but most of us, because we're women. And once we're with other women, we can rant, we can vent, we can, share. No. We can share in confidence with our sisters. We can talk about our problems. We can talk about what we're going through. We can let off, right? Most men don't get a chance to do that. The argument is that they need it potentially less than women do, since they process emotions differently. But if there is something to be said for men's mental health, it's that the burden of performance never lets up, and there isn't a space for them to actually say, you know what, hold on, I'm not coping, I need help. Right now, obviously, we had this conversation with Andrew Tate talking about depression and saying that, all you need to do is do X, Y, and Z, and depression is nonsense. But I mean, from a therapeutic perspective, or more from like a coaching perspective, do you recommend that men who are under pressure due to the responsibilities that are on their shoulders, should they just man up? Should they get a therapist? Should they learn something? What is, should they find a friend? What are we saying here?
So, yeah, and just the preference, this, anyone, this is just my perspective as a coach, not therapeutic advice. And if you have a therapist or a counselor, you should take their advice over mine. But what I would say is this. As I've always said, I think both men and women need to learn how to regulate their emotions.
Yeah.
So whether you do that with a coach or a counselor, a therapist, you need to learn how to regulate your emotions. And so in particular to this point, men need to learn how to regulate their emotions. That's essential. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that unfortunately the conditioning hasn't done. What the conditioning has mm-hmm. done is told men to be vulnerable. And it's telling men to be vulnerable by skipping the step of telling men to learn how to regulate their emotions. You learn how to regulate your emotions, and then you have the information, you have the capacity to then discern who you should be vulnerable with and who you shouldn't be vulnerable with. Mm-hmm. But it's irresponsible and oftentimes I would suggest selfish by society and women to say that men should be vulnerable without talking about this step beforehand of knowing how to regulate your emotions, right? Because if you don't know how to regulate your emotions, you can overshare. And for anyone to say there is no such thing as oversharing, you're not being, you're either ill-informed or not being sincere.
Yeah.
Right? Or looking to just argue. So, and then there is something to be said about who should you share with, right? So my point is men need to learn how to regulate their emotions. And I think that's essential for them to be able to be the leaders in their homes as well, right? Because you don't need to be the tyrant in the home, the lion in the home, and the mouse in the streets, nor the lion in the home and the lion outside the streets. There's a balance. There's a time for each emotion. There is a time to be angry. There's also a time to be irritated as the alternative to anger. Right? So I can be frustrated with my wife and respond in a manner that's healthy and constructive, right? That's functional for the marriage. It's rare that you're going to be angry and respond in a manner that's functional to the marriage. You can be firm and assertive while being irritated and annoyed and still be in a tone that's respectful. That's what you need. But you can only do that type of discernment when you know how to regulate your thinking. You regulate your thinking, you regulate your emotions by default. Thinking, feeling, connection. So you de-escalate this, you de-escalate the emotions, and typically what comes out on your hands or your limbs or what you do is going to be de-escalated. It's going to be functional. It's going to be appropriate to the situation. Yeah. And oftentimes, unfortunately, what we as men, but also women as well, because women do it oftentimes with their tongue, with the words that they choose, it's not dysfunctional. It's not constructive to the situation, right? Right? It's dysfunctional, right? Because it cuts the conversation. It cuts the connection in the moment because of the response. Men do that and women do that. So both need to learn how to regulate their emotions, not just this mantra of being vulnerable. And so the pushback that I would have, because, you know, I never mind the smoke. And if you like giving me smoke, you can always find me on IG, Nasir al Amin, and give me some smoke. Because women, a lot of times you do this to be selfish. You tell men to be vulnerable because you think it is a testament to how much he loves you and how much he needs you and how much he's going to be committed to you. And oh, boo-boo and habibi, if you're vulnerable to me, then that means I am the star that you only see in your life. I'll take the smoke.
Nah, there's no smoke, but I just disagree. I think.
Oh, wait, oh, you do? Do you?
I really? Disagree. I do. Yeah, I disagree. I don't think it's coming from.
Hold on. Miss Robert, without the S on it, Miss Robert. Question for you.
Yes.
Do you think that women at times want their spouse, their husband, because we Muslims, their spouse, to be vulnerable because it's for them, a testament or a sign that he really cares for me?
No, I don't think that. I don't agree.
Okay.
No, I don't agree. I'll tell you why.
Hold on. Let me get my tea for this. With milk.
I don't think it's about him. I don't think that it's about him caring about me or anybody else. It's not about caring. I think it's more a trust issue. I think when your spouse opens up to you and shares something private, something that is not, you know, out for the whole world to see, it's a privilege, right? And it shows that he trusts you. That for me is what it shows. It's not about you care about me so much, so now you tell me your childhood trauma. No, that doesn't make sense as far as I'm concerned.
If he trusts me, then that means what?
We're at a deeper level. Our relationship is at a deeper level.
And I want us to be at that deeper level.
Yeah.
And to validate and prove that we are at that deeper level.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's an us thing. It's not because you care about me, therefore you're going to share with me. It's that's where we are, and that's how you see us, and that's how you see me, and you see yourself as
prove to you.
Yes.
Right. And what you're saying is I need to prove to you that we are at that deeper level.
Potentially, yeah.
And that's for your interest.
Well, certainly in my female brain, it's our interest, because that's in the interest of the relationship for us to be in that close in that way, not just for me. But then,
good point. But what in your female mind, as you say, the woman's mind, what you're also saying, and what I'm hearing is, we need to be at a deeper level right now.
I think the thinking would be, this is where I want us to be. This is where I would like us to be. Well, yeah. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, well, yeah. But in order to get us to that point that we need to be right now, I need you to be vulnerable. And if you can't,
I don't know how many people have this conversation with their spouses to say, oh, can you be vulnerable with me right now? Like, why are you not vulnerable with me? Like, is that a thing? You're the counselor. So is that a thing that comes up in marriages?
The reality is, this is what goes on in a woman's mind. If he's not being vulnerable with me, then what does that say about where we're at? Why
potentially,
yes. Why can't he be vulnerable with me? He should be able to be vulnerable with me. Hence, notice the word, the demand, the command. He should be.
Yeah.
Why should he be vulnerable with you at this stage, at this point in the marriage?
I think potentially, and again, guys, this is a complete made up scenario, right? That I'm working through right now, and I'm trying to think on behalf of the mass, which is, not very easy. But I think that for many women, there is potentially, and again, guys, come for us in the comments if you disagree, she may be at a certain level, and she may have shared certain things, and she may feel a certain level of trust and confidence in her husband, right, in her spouse. And if that's not reciprocated, that I think leads to an insecurity in her to say, maybe that's what it is. So it's like, are we matching here? Like, are we at the same level of commitment? Are we at the same level?
And how do I, as a woman, alleviate that discomfort of the insecurity of us not being on the same level? I want to get rid of this discomfort. And if I'm at this level with him, if I'm willing to share with him, if I'm willing to be vulnerable with him, he should be able to be vulnerable with me.
Because I see myself as a safe place and a safe space. I see that as myself, as that I believe I am trustworthy. So he should feel okay to,
So his thinking must change, right? What he believes are the steps to being able to share something to that extent, whatever it may be, has to change. It has to automatically change as of this date, because at this date, I'm saying I'm ready, I'm vulnerable, I've shared with him. Now he should be at this point.
To meet me where I am. To meet me where I am. Yeah.
Exactly. And the relationship is not where it should be, because he's not able to be on the same level of me when it comes to this particular thing. Now let's forget about all the other things where we may not be at the same level.
Right.
When it comes to this thing, we have to be on the same level. And if not, it's problematic. Versus a more flexible, coming back to what we talked about in the very beginning, versus a more flexible preference that I would prefer that my husband sees me as a safe space and is able to articulate his emotions and fears to me. But if he can't, it's not the end of the world. And it's still worth it for me to be in this relationship.
If he can't, and also if he won't. Because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of other conversations that we've had on this platform, where we've talked about, and this has happened numerous times. I've seen it so many times on social media where, women will be talking about men being vulnerable and being in touch with their emotions and all of this stuff. But when they dig a bit deeper, they get those same women to admit that, well, actually, I don't want like a crybaby, and like he needs to be able to handle his business. Like, I don't want somebody who's constantly whining or moaning or nagging, or, you know what I'm saying? Basically, I don't want a man who's too emotional. And this came up, if you guys remember, when we had the conversation with Hale Banani in one of our conferences, because there was a conversation between some of the speakers about men showing emotion. And she said, yes, as a man, you should be in touch with your emotions and you should share with your wife. But she said, not too much. Do you remember that? She said, not too much, because no woman wants a man who's like a woman, basically, like who's emotional all over the place and is like, bleeding all over her. So it's a bit, there's a thin line. There's a thin line. And it's nuanced.
What I said before, when you ask men, or the large part, demand that men be vulnerable without the step before of learning how to regulate their emotions, they don't have the information to have the discernment to be able to know how much to share, what is too much, what is not enough, and to who to share with, right? And I think there's this other part that we have to come back to that I think is still important. If he doesn't want to share, that's okay. If he goes through your marriage and believes that I don't want to share with you my deep fears, my insecurities, that just may be his issue. Let's not get caught up on that. Does he show up properly in the way that the marriage needs to in other areas? Don't get caught up on this one thing.
And can I just say as well that at this point, again, this expectations thing, I've noticed that the only thing that we've mentioned here that is related to Deen is provision, right? To a certain extent, the leading of the family as well. But I think that it's fair to say, and those of you who are watching, you can confirm this, the majority of the problems, okay, aside from the provision, which, sisters, I know is an issue, right? I see your comments, we get the DMs, I get it, okay? When a man is not providing fully, it's the problem, guys, and we're not going to like sugarcoat that on this platform, okay? If a man is not doing what he needs to do to provide for his family, it is a problem. And it is something that has, you know, negative consequences that basically ripple outwards, okay? Not just the fact that you're not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, the role that he's given you to play, that you're not playing that role, but someone else has to play that role now. And who is that somebody else going to be? Is it going to be the government? Is it going to be your wife? Is it going to be your wife's family? Whoever else it is puts you at a disadvantage. If it's your wife who's doing it, then my dear brother, you're at a disadvantage. If it's her family doing it, you're at a disadvantage. If it's your father doing it, you're at a disadvantage. And if it's the government doing it, you're at a disadvantage. All of these, from what I've observed over the years, that issue of a man not doing everything he can, yeah, and I'm talking about men who are lazy and cannot be bothered, right? And I'm not going to accept anyone on this platform telling me they don't exist. I don't want to hear it. Okay, all of you come and say, oh, all the brothers are working so hard. We know that's not true. Okay, yes, I'm getting ratchet, guys. Sorry, because I've been there. Okay, and we know the truth in these streets. Okay, there are brothers who, for whatever reason, do not take their role of being a provider seriously enough. And that has negative consequences, not just for the wife and the relationship, but also for the children. What they grow up seeing, the boys, what they grow up seeing, the girls, what they grow up seeing, you know? So let's keep the issue of provision to the side. I want to talk about the other expectations that we have, again, of relationships, not marriage. Because most of us, that marriage is actually such a simple thing. Look at what the Deen says. You've got rights, you've got responsibilities. You've got rights, you've got responsibilities. You take care of your responsibilities, inshallah, you get your rights. You take care of your responsibilities, inshallah, you get your rights. They're very simple. We could count them on two hands here. Where we get into trouble is the relationship expectations. It needs to be like this. He needs to be like that. She needs to look like this. He needs to show up like this. And most of that stuff is based on fairy tales. Am I wrong? Am I out of pocket here, Brother Nasir? Have I lost the plot? Am I the one who's crazy? What's happening?
Yeah, well, I even if I thought, I would not say that you are crazy or out of pocket. Did you see this? Yeah, Sada? Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you that the relationship aspect is the critical part that we need to really learn how to navigate. But if I can, let me go back to the other part, because you brought up, right, the provision part, and there are men who are not showing up when it comes to the financial piece. What are your thoughts when it comes to sisters thinking of university as their safety net, right? Being in university and in a situation where in that, get a proposal, should they continue the university as a safety net in case he's not living up to his provision, to his requirement? How should sisters approach it? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I remember having a question from a sister about this, and I think the answer that I gave her, so this question is really for any, young sister out there who's, maybe hearing some of these conversations that we are now having about marriage and about, ensuring that you don't miss the boat and all of that, and is asking, okay, but I was going to go to university to do this. Should I not go anymore? What's your advice? And I think that, if you're going to university to study something, and I please, guys, don't come for me in the comments about halal, haram, university, mixing, etc. I'm really not having that conversation right now. We know that for better or for worse, the majority of, young people who go to the university in the West are going to be in a mixed environment. Let their families sort it out. That's up to them. But what I will say on a principle level is, as a woman, you need to have the long view. As a young woman, you need to look at your life and look at the long view. So where does your university study feature in the long term? Okay. Don't get distracted by, a degree in anthropology because you're so in love with anthropology. It's going to take you 4 years and you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And you've not really thought through what happens afterwards. We need to be strategic. We as Muslims in today's age need to be strategic. If you are going to go into a mixed environment, right, and be exposed to who knows what ma'asi out there and get into debt or pay thousands of pounds, you better be strategic. You better have a plan. You better not be taking a degree that is just based on stuff that's interesting and maybe intellectually stimulating, but actually has no fa'idah, has no benefit, right? That's the first thing. So really consider what you're going to university for. Secondly, whatever it is that you're intending to do with your degree, please don't let it be in case my husband can't pay the bills, in case we divorce, in case I don't get married. I just don't think that that is a healthy mindset to go into university with. I really don't. What we want is, and again, guys, don't come for me, but what's the long view? What are we on this earth for? What are we doing here? This dunya is so full of distractions, right? For everyone. But I can't help feeling that for women, it's even more so, because you're being told to go to university, to get a degree, to get a master's, to get even a PhD, to get this career under your belt, to get all these accomplishments, to travel, to have the wardrobe, to have the eyelashes, to have the hair, to have, whatever it is, right? We're being told all of these very short-term, dunyawi, materialistic goals. And we have drunk the Kool-Aid. We can't even see the forest for the trees, right? They never talk about finding a husband. They never talk about becoming wife material. They never talk about being marriage worthy. They never talk about preparing to be a mother and fostering the next generation. They never talk about the long game. Why? Because there is more benefit in them for you to focus on these short-term dunyawi materialistic goals. It is much more profitable for them in every way. They get your intellectual labor, they get your physical labor, they get your financial clout that you get from the end of it. They do not care what happens to you when you hit 30. They do not care what happens to you when you hit 35 and you expected to be married by now. But every event that you go to, the brothers are on the spectrum. The brothers haven't got 2 pennies to rub together, but here you are, you bought your own house. This stuff is real, guys. It's what's happening out there. So if there are young girls, young women listening to this, I want you to be strategic. Take a degree that is going to give you real benefit, right? It's not to say you can't work when the kids are older, or when when the children have gone to school, or whatever conversation you have with your spouse to be. I personally, we know that there is a need for women to be in certain professions. We know that there's things women can do from home, that they can create their own things. We know this, right? But be strategic. Do you want to get married? Do you want to have a family one day? Would you like some children? Where is it in your plan? If you want to get married, you better start learning how to be a wife. If you want to get married and have a family, you better start learning some motherly, wifely skills, because this dunya out there, they're not going to teach you any of that. In fact, they'll shame you for even thinking about those things. And that's why I say be strategic. And I said to the sister who messaged me, I said to her, if you decide to continue with your university education, firstly, check your intention and change it. Don't make your intention in case my husband can't afford X, Y, and Z. That's your husband's job. Let him do it. That's his role. Let him play it. That is his responsibility. Let him take charge of it. Trust me, again, we're saying men this, men that, but we know that there are brothers out there who want 50-50, and they don't want a woman who's not working, and they don't want a woman who doesn't have any money of her own. So, hey, maybe you'll find yourself one of those. But if that's not your taste, be strategic. And if you go to university, think about what your intention is. Second, what you're going to study. And third, while you are there, keep your eyes open. Be open to the prospect of marriage, right? And learn wifely skills, learn housemaking skills. I'm telling you, when I say this generation, maybe now 2 generations, we've lost the art of how to create a home. We don't know how to do it anymore. We see it as beneath us. We see it as tedious. I know I wasn't taught how to be a wife. I had to learn on the job. And I was coming up in a time where, you know, things were not as they are now. But anyway, I've spoken enough on this, but I think that's my unfiltered advice. Be strategic. That is what I would say. Yes.
Yeah. So it's getting the dual degree, the degree that's strategic, but also getting that MS degree, that Mrs. degree, right? Looking for your spouse. But because I like smoke and I want to get smoke sent your way, are you suggesting that women have to qualify to be marriage worthy? Because I heard you use marriage worthy. Are you suggesting that sisters need to qualify for a man? Yeah, you like that?
Let me tell you something. Let me no. It's like, it's okay. Give me back the mic. I'm gonna take it. Let me say something. I have said this before, and I'm gonna say this again. Sisters, the time for brothers automatically committing to a traditional marriage are coming to an end. I'm going to say that again. The time of brothers automatically committing to a traditional marriage where he's the provider and the protector and your money is your own and all of that good stuff, right? Where you live together and all blah, blah, blah. Those times are coming to an end. Do you know how many sisters have told me how many brothers are on the matrimonial app saying, I'm looking for something casual? What do you think no strings nikah is about? Y'all need to clock this, yeah? Because some of us are not marriage material. You are no strings nikah material, okay? I said it, right? And unfortunately, for better or for worse, the brothers have clocked on. We should take him off the screen. The brothers have clocked that the sisters are not about that wife life anymore. Brothers have clocked it. And they are the ones saying, I can't be dealing with it. I can't be bothered with these sisters because they don't want this, they don't want that, they want this, they want this, they want that. You've heard them. You've heard this conversation, I'm sure. So if that's the case, if good brothers with deen and character who have good jobs cannot be bothered with the sisters because of their stink attitude, what does that say to you? That says you're not marriage material, right? He is not prepared to commit his resources to you. He is not prepared to commit his life to you. He doesn't want to start a family with you, because all those brothers who are having no strings nikah, who are having like something casual, they don't want to start a family. They don't want to commit their full resources. They do not want to be joined till death do us part. That's not what they're about. So sisters, like I said before, the time of brothers automatically giving you that mahar and coming to meet the family and you know, all the traditional stuff has come to an end, because there are increasing numbers of brothers on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to practicing, right? There's ones on the, I don't know what you call left side of the spectrum, who are maybe on the laxer side when it comes to practicing, and they're looking for hookups. They're not interested in that marriage life. They're not down for it, right? Then there's brothers on the right side of the spectrum, or whichever one you want to call it, the practicing brothers who are like, it's too much headache. I can't be, I'm like, I know that I'm going to be unhappy. She's going to give me a hard time. It's not worth it. So sisters, you do need to actually start showing up differently if you actually want a brother to commit to you the way that you feel you deserve to be committed to. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, so a couple of points, and I hope that smoke comes, and if not, then if I don't see the smoke in the comments, I'll make sure next episode.
We'll be disappointed.
Yeah, I'll come up with something else to make sure you get some smoke. So a couple of things. One point, look, because this is what I do. Majority of my client base are Muslim women, UK, Canada, and the States. There are some sisters that are of the mindset that the no strings is exactly what they're in for and what they need. What I am saying to you, sisters, and I mean this sincerely, a nikah literally only takes 10 to 15 seconds. 10 to 15 seconds. in a no strings nikah is better than the alternative, which is dating and letting him taste the cooking. Your culinary skills being tasted before nikah. So please, if you know that is your mindset, you know you about that life, and the evidence, the history shows that, that's what you need, and that's what you need to go towards. However, for those of you that are wanting more than that, want some strings, want a contract that is considered traditional, you got to qualify. You got to qualify yourself. And I think you're absolutely right when you're saying brothers are hip to it. And I think brothers were hip to it before, but I think what we're seeing now is brothers are being more vocal and exploring more options outwardly.
Yeah, it's definitely more vocal.
Yeah. Than what they were. See, we were having these conversations before, but we weren't really having it publicly, because again, and I say this often, we were often shamed in the community and shamed from the member of being boys, right? Not being boys because we don't want to show up for women, some women that we've determined and assessed and vetted to not be wife material. But from the member, it's perceived that just because she's a sister and she shows up and says that she wants to get married and she's saying she can't find brothers, then the brothers are not being men, we're being boys. No. Amen. We just vetted and we see that she isn't worthy.
So and this
that's uncomfortable people to hear. That's uncomfortable. Brothers can't have the insight, right? The skill sets, the experience to know a woman that's not quality marriage material. Again, it comes back to that Disney fantasy we spoke about before. It doesn't matter what her past is. It doesn't matter what her choices are. It doesn't matter that she didn't have accountability for past choices. We just have to bear that, and we can be the ones that put it on our shoulders, and we can be the prince and the knight in shining armor, and we can, we can lower our standards, or we shouldn't even have standards. Right? We should accept them as they are.
Yes. Now that is again, and I think this is our last thing, and I want to wrap up with this, is this expectation that you must be accepted just as you are, right? That whoever is for me accepts me and takes me as I am. Now, I am going to say that there are certain privileges that come with being married for a certain length of time and having had a man's children. And you can disagree with me, brother, if you feel that I'm wrong on this, right? But I know from experience and from what I've seen and from what I heard and read, a man, and in fact, actually, let me backtrack, because I think this actually works both ways. When you have already committed to somebody and you are now committed, you love the person, you have children together, right? There is something holding you there. There is an institution. Okay. It's not just feelings based. It's not just like it's a nice thing to have. That's your institution, right? And there are certain things that you accept and tolerate as a result of the commitment that you already made. So when it comes to, for example, we're going to use the gaining weight example, because I know this gets people stressed out, right? I'm going to use the gaining weight example. When you've had a few children, for some women, this is a reason for them to put on weight. Not everybody does. Sometimes it's a natural thing. In some cultures, it's considered like mandatory. In Egypt, if you have a baby and you get married, if you get married and you have a baby and you don't put on weight, the family is going to give the man a hard time, because it's like, you're not feeding our daughter. So I know that culturally, Yani, this is whatever. But let's not say putting on a few pounds. Let's talk about putting on a few pounds. The weight that you are and the way that your body changes after having 1, 2, 3, 4 of his children is, and I would argue, something that he tolerates, right? And he accepts, because you went through all of that for his children. Brother Nasir, am I right?
Depending on how much weight it is.
Yes. We're not talking about gargantuan. We're just talking about just natural levels.
We got to qualify that, because some Muslim women will say it doesn't matter how much weight she gains, and we'll see it in the comments. It doesn't matter no matter how much weight she gains, he should love and accept her no matter what.
Okay, so potentially, right? But what I want to say, and this is the same if, for example, and I've seen this happening in couples, right? After the marriage, after the commitment, once there are children, if the man falls on hard times, or there are mental health issues, or there are issues in the family, these are now things that we accept and we tolerate because we've made the commitment, okay? That's what I mean about getting away with certain things. Now, before the marriage, before the commitment, and before the children, or without the marriage, without the commitment, and without the children, you do not have that leverage. You do not have that leverage. So assuming that you as somebody who's maybe just having a conversation with someone, right? Or maybe you're courting, are going to get the same amount of leeway as the mother of his 3 children is delusional, right? Because there is no way that he is going to give you that leverage, just like you wouldn't give it to him. Because if you're talking to a brother and it comes out that he has schizophrenia, trust and believe, you're taking a few steps back, okay? You're taking a few steps back. Let's be real about this, because you're thinking to yourself, do I want to sign up to this? Is this what I want for my life? Versus, he's the father of your children. He's an amazing man. He's been looking after you all this time. And all of a sudden there is a mental issue or there is a physical issue. That is a completely different conversation, even in your own mind, right? So going back to taking me as I am, at the end of the day, we are all vetting each other to see, can I get what I need from you, right? I know what I want. I know what I need. Can I get it from you, right? Can I give you what you want? Can you give me what I need, right? Mm-hmm. If the answer to that is no, and sis, and brothers, same for you, because we've got brothers on here who also cannot get married due to maybe things that we can talk about on a different episode, right? But brother, sister, if continuously you're meeting people and they find that within you, they cannot get what they want, and their desires are adi, yani they're just normal things. It's not crazy stuff. It's just normal things. We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at ourselves. So if, for example, you're having conversations with brothers and those conversations turn combative, and then he backs off, and that happens once, it happens twice, it happens 3 times, happens 4 times. Sis, you need to look at yourself. And it's not enough to say, but that's me though. Take me as I am. Like, he should accept me as I am. And you know that, what is it? If he can't accept me at my worst, he shouldn't get me at my best. Yeah. You are just shooting yourself in the foot. That is not strategic. But anyway, I'm sure you've got some advice for the brothers and the sisters on this for us to close up. Inshallah.
Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction between love, attraction, and arousal. And so when you're married, with time in, children in, the love will be there for sure. But what you should want is for the attraction and the arousal to still be there. Mm-hmm. And that's healthy for the relationship. And that's why you should continue to monitor your weight, right? You should not allow your... Yes, definitely.
Talk to that kirsch. Talk to that belly that's there, please.
Yeah, and I think it's important for men to take the lead on that, right? Because it also sets the tone for your children to know that healthy choices are also a part of how we show up physically.
Yeah.
Right. Our mindset, right? Our thoughts produce the choices in terms of what we consume. Right. So healthy thinking produces healthy choices. And what's on the end of your fork? How you choose to use your downtime, how you choose to handle not getting what you want, right? Because when I don't get what I want when I want it, it can lead to depression. And if I'm depressed, I'm more than likely not going to get in that gym. Mm. But if it just leads to me being sad or irritated, I can still be functional, right? Annoyance and sadness are both functional negative emotions, meaning I can still function when I have them. I can be sad and still get on the treadmill. I can still be frustrated and still get behind some weights, right?
That's the best time to get behind some weights or the punching bag or something, mashallah.
Exactly. Versus turn into a substance, right? Or turning to a computer screen, right?
Yeah.
To watch something that is not constructive, right? So how we deal with discomforting emotions is a reflection of our thinking. Hence, when you say a man should accept me as I am, especially when it comes to weight, for a man that has insight and resources, he's going to understand that a part of that, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, is your weight is a reflection of your choices, a reflection of your thinking, your mindset. And so, if it's a reflection of your mindset, I'm assessing your mindset.
Is it okay to say that he just doesn't like the roles?
Yeah,
is that okay? No. Wait. Hold on. I'm actually serious,
some
guys.
men like roles, but those are
we need to have a conversation about this, because and the thing is, we are playing like we're playing dummies here for a second, okay? Because we know that men are visual creatures. We know this. And we know that men, by and large, okay, I actually read a study, worldwide survey of the kind of bodies that men find attractive. Not faces so much, it was about bodies. But we know that neither on men nor women is obesity seen as attractive, right? In general, let's not talk about outliers, let's not talk about fetishes, in general, right? So sis, if you're carrying extra weight, and I'm saying this from as much as I can from a place of love. If you're carrying extra weight, and again, actually, let me just preface this by mentioning the hadith. We talked about a man being married for deen and character. We talked about these deen and character guys, right? What does the Prophet ﷺ say a woman is married for? Those 4 things, right? One of them is beauty. So sis, especially for my unmarried sisters right now, I want to give you some game. Work with what you have. If you're carrying extra weight, likely you will look better if you toned up, okay? Because most of us do, right? If you've got a bit of this and a bit of that, if you've had kids or whatever, even if you haven't, prioritize getting into the best shape you can, right? We're not out here telling people to start getting surgery or anything like that, but just look the best that you can. Your skin, your hair, your body, your hands, your feet, right? Keeping yourself up, keeping yourself kempt, styling your hair in a way that looks after, that accentuates the best of what you have. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, like this deen is so beautiful and simple. And the best thing is that guys are really simple. Most men that we've surveyed in our very professional surveys, they don't want faces full of makeup. They don't expect the weaves and the wigs and the false eyelashes and the Botox and all of that stuff. They just would like you to be appealing and attractive. And most of us can get there if we put in the effort. So it's not degrading to make yourself look the best that you can in order to attract the best spouse. Of course, we're not talking about putting yourself out there, but when you do have the meeting where he sees you, don't you want to be appealing to his eyes? Don't you want him to see you and be like, yeah, rather than, oh, what a shame, right? That's something that's within our control. We can do that. Most of us, we can do that. I'm not talking about outliers. Most of us can do better when it comes to looking after ourselves. So why are we lazy to do it? Why can't we be bothered? Why are we too proud to do it? Why do we think that we shouldn't have to do that for a man to want us? Don't you want your man to want you? Don't you want your man to look at you and be like, me that? That's what you want, isn't it? So instead of saying that, well, this is me and take me as I am, which, if I may say so, is a very arrogant attitude, and it's probably not befitting of a believer, right? That we should be humble and that we should be grateful for Allah's gifts and make the most of them, so that we are appealing to our spouses. And this is for people who are married and unmarried, right? There shouldn't be this attitude of, well, I shouldn't have to do that for him to see my worth. Oh, brother, just take it away, please, with the worth and the value thing.
No, I think you hit it on. I think you hit it on, and I think that's why I came back And I was trying to explain to sisters that brothers can see through it. It's a mindset thing. It's a choice thing. Your extra weight can be a reflection of your thinking. And that's what we don't want. We don't want that extra mindset that isn't constructive to the direction we're going. Right? Again, a good book, this will help sisters and brothers. Pick up a book called, I'll put it in the comments, the exact title, but I think if I'm not mistaken, it's called The Beck Diet. And essentially what the book does is it teaches you how to manage your weight through managing your thinking, right? It's that thinking, feeling connection, because typically we comfort eat. And that comfort eating is a result of some disturbance that we are trying to process mentally. And since we don't know how, because we haven't been taught to regulate our emotions, since we don't know how to process this disturbance that's going on externally, we distract ourselves with food or shopping or a substance or behind a screen. So hence, when I said a brother can see that your weight is a reflection of your thinking, he can see and understand that you don't know how, again, not all, but oftentimes you don't really know how to process discomfort.
May I add something? And again, this is me just trying to see it from the other perspective, right? Because I'm thinking of the various thinkings that would be behind somebody letting themselves go. And I think this applies to men and women, right? One, that we have unhelpful and unhealthy appetites and habits, right? So unhealthy relationship with food, whether we're comfort eating, whether we're binge eating, whatever the case may be, right? Eating to numb, eating because we're bored, etc. So there's an unhealthy relationship with food. There's also a lifestyle issue there, right? If your norm is to eat fast food, or is to overeat, or is to eat chocolates and biscuits at night, or, you know, any of those types of things, and to not be active, that's a lifestyle issue. Now, this is a lifestyle choice, right? And as a spouse, let's keep it gender neutral, you will be looking to see, you know, does this person have the kind of lifestyle that I want joined with mine, or that I want to join, right? If it's the case of a man, maybe is that the kind of lifestyle that I want for myself, right? So there's those two things. The third is health in general, because as we know, excess weight leads to a lot of problems later on. Obesity leads to the heart disease, it leads to the diabetes and the high cholesterol and all of that. And we know in our communities, this is particularly problematic, right? So somebody might not want to sign up to health problems later on, right? So that might be another reason. Fourth reason could be, which has just slipped my mind, but it was a good one. The fourth reason would be that the children, right? If my wife or my husband has any of these things, how is it going to impact my children and our family in general? If my wife or to be is overweight and has an unhealthy relationship with food, how can I then trust her or guide her to bring my children up with a healthy relationship with food, right? So there are these four considerations, not to mention the attractiveness side, right? Because man or woman, like we said, if you are carrying a lot of extra weight, you typically are not going to be that visually appealing to the vast majority of people. So that could be an attraction issue as well. So that's 5 issues that are potential blockers of a relationship, of a marriage, right? That if we, men, women, whoever this is applying to, if we're aware of those things and we take action on them, we could literally get rid of those 5 reasons. So that's 5 blockers taken out of the way, just on the issue of weight. But what do you think? Do you think that's a fair analysis?
I think it's fair. And I think that's the thing. Again, it's important to acknowledge how important attraction and arousal is, right? They are very important, right? And that's what we were saying, like in terms of the marriage, if you have children with a man, you have years into a marriage with him, the love will be there. But that attraction and arousal may fade. And that's what you don't want to happen. And you have to take some level of accountability, both men and women, for not showing up when it comes to, or doing what you need to do when it comes to the attraction and the arousal. That's important. That's a part of showing up in a healthy way in a marriage. You cannot just get married, give him kids, and then think, oh, I can let myself go. And same for a brother.
Yeah.
Same for a brother.
100%.
Again, it's a reflection on a man as well in terms of
For
how he's
sure.
processing his emotions, how he's processing adversity, right? It can show in his body.
Yeah. I think those 5, they apply to men and women, you know, across the board. So, yeah. You heard it here, guys. Attraction and arousal. Okay, we want to make sure that we maintain that, inshallah. But I pray that you guys got something out of today's conversation. Brother Nasir, how do you feel about today's chat? Do you think that we covered all the bases that we wanted to cover?
I think we gave the male perspective, which is the right perspective. So, you know, we could end that.
That's what we do on this channel, guys. Not, you know, not the deen or like, you know, Islam or anything like that. Just the male perspective. That's what we're here for. That's it. We're pick-me's anyway, right? So anyway.
and we brought that dapperness to it, mashallah.
Please put mashallahs in the comments. We would hate for any ayn to touch our brother Nasir, because we will be back again, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, next week, having a conversation, an uncomfortable conversation, a necessary conversation from 2 perspectives, bi'idhnillah. And I do believe that next week, we're going to be talking about the skill of taking ownership and then addressing some more delusions along the way, inshallah. So guys, listen, if you enjoy...
Profiles, remember.
Oh, yes, and we have some profiles to share with you. Yes, we're very excited about that, mashallah. And if you are interested in Soft Life, which is Brother Nasir's high-end matchmaking service, please go to his Instagram. It's Nasir al Amin. Instagram, you'll find him if you search it, and he has his DMs are open. If you're a brother and you are a high-value Muslim man and you are ready to be vetted by Brother Nasir, do get in touch. And if you are a sister who is the equivalent of a high-value Muslim woman, or you'd like to learn how to be one, then please, inshallah, get in touch with Brother Nasir and he will vet you too. Brother Nasir, do you want to say anything to the audience about that particularly before we sign off?
No, you said everything that I would want to say. And sisters and brothers, this is for those that want traditional marriages. Right, brothers, you are going to have to, no one is getting on my platform or going to be promoted by me who's thinking 50-50, period. You have to accept the responsibility that it is your responsibility to provide for your wife and your family. Now, what the 2 of you negotiate after you meet, that's for you 2 to decide. But you need to go in with the mindset that it is your divine responsibility to provide, period. And sisters, it's also your divine responsibility to show up, to be a traditional wife, right? And so just to put some spice on it. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, to put some spice on this, like sprinkle some spice. Yeah, submission should not be a foreign word for you. And if it is, don't slide in my DMs.
Don't do it, guys. Don't do it, because you'll end up having to book a session. Instead, what I suggest is going through my channel and watching the videos, especially from the Secrets of Successful Wives conference, from the marriage conversation, any videos on there where I talk to OG wives who've been married for 10, 15, 20 years plus. They will give you the game. And I do believe then you can circle back and get in the DMs. But I do believe, I feel, to be honest, if I can, you know, say this in closing, I know that in the general society, there is a feeling that the older women in society are misleading the younger women, right? Older women who maybe have made mistakes, have not had accountability, have drunk the Kool-Aid, whatever the case may be. But what they're telling younger women is not what younger women actually need to hear. And I pray that this is the truth, because I feel grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us in a position where we are able to hopefully tell the youngest women who are now my youngers what they need to know. and that we, inshallah, are not a source of misguidance to them, and that we are actually giving them advice that will help them fi dunya wa fil akhirah bi'idhnillah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it from us. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
And I think that's happening. You know, I've always said on your platform, and when we've ever spoken on the platform, I think older women are winning. And I think the way that they win is through the lessons learned and the wisdom that they take into the next relationship. If you do that work, right? If you do that work on the baggage before you go into the next relationship, and older women typically do that, right? Because they've had the hand smacked a little bit more in life. And thus they've been put in a position where they need to do that work. And those that do that work go into the next relationship with wisdom. And I think that's the leverage, that's the asset that more mature sisters that are divorced, that have children have. And that's what they need to leverage. And younger sisters, that's what you need to take from the older women. Yeah. You need to take that wisdom, that lessons learned that they have. And for brothers, one of the things that you look for is to not rule a sister out just because of her age. Look for the lessons learned, for the wisdom. What is the assets that she brings to the situation? What is the value add that she can bring? Typically, an older woman has a less difficult onboarding process because she's gone through the lessons learned. And that can be valuable. That can be valuable to your program, to the direction you're going. And younger sisters, that's what you need to look for.
Let's get our younger sisters wised up, inshallah, sooner rather than later, inshallah. But I think, Brother Nasir, I want to thank you for joining me on this week's show. As always, it was a firecracker, alhamdulillah. Guys, questions, comments, concerns, put them down below, and make sure that you like the video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 40,000 subscribers. I believe we'll get there, inshallah, very soon. By the time you watch this, we may already have got to 40K, in which case we'll be going to 50K. Why not?
And can a brother get a subscribe? Can we do a tag team? Can they click one subscribe?
Yes.
And then go over and click another subscribe? Because that would be the right thing to do. No, since they got the right perspective from the man's perspective.
And it's a 50-50 deal. You gotta love it. His Nasir al Amin's YouTube and Instagram links and the website will be in the comments, in the description, inshallah, guys. Everything that you need from today's show will be in the description. Know that we are planning to do this on a weekly basis, inshallah, and we want those profiles. We have got a couple of brothers lined up, haven't we, who we're going to showcase. But sisters, you have to qualify for them. Oh, yes, you have to show that this brother is actually going to benefit from being with you, because we're only going to bring brothers who have a lot to offer. So that's going to be our value add, inshallah. But for now, we're out, and we'll see you on the next one, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.